every year, this is a company that they've hired me on for like the past 10 years
Oh,
to
that's awesome.
paint different murals and whatnot. And it resulted in, I just wanted to surprise them and be like, hey, look what I can do. Because they know I can paint. And that was like the joke. They always call me the painter and da-da-da-da. And so then I'm like, oh, well, let's show you what else I can do. And I brought in these 2 dragons that I had made them for their specific event, the Medieval Masquerade. And they were like, what in the world? Where did you come up with this idea? And I was like, I don't know. It just kind of happened.
Today, we're thrilled to feature local artist Kristin Beyers, whose magical dragon installation now lives in the kids area of the RPL's main library. Kristin's work has brought color, imagination, and a sense of wonder to the space, reminding us that libraries aren't just places for reading, but places where stories come alive. In this episode, we'll talk to Kristin about her creative journey, what inspired the dragons, and how public art can transform shared spaces. So let's dive in. So welcome, Kristin.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
So can you tell us about your background and about what got you started as an artist?
Got a little later start in my art career. I started in late high school, I would say. And then I decided that was something I was very interested in doing. So then I decided to go into an art and science backing at a community college. And then from there, I went on to university and got a degree in visual communication. And that was for graphic design, but I had a lot of history with a lot of other different mediums. I took drawing, painting, sculpture classes. I really enjoyed learning a lot. And I wanted to learn all of the different mediums rather than just the graphic design. So I decided to continue to learn and teach myself as many different things as I possibly could, and made sure to just continue down and keep learning.
So how would you describe your style and how has it evolved over time?
It's always drawn from a place of, I guess, mystical wonder is what I like to label it as. I love nature. I love being outside. I love finding those unique magical places. Lake Superior was always a place that I went as a young kid, and even now as an adult, it's my grand ocean is what I always say. It's fresh water, but it's the most massive body of water that I love going to because it just makes you feel so small. And you got to feel that all the time sometimes. But it definitely, that has inspired me always. Like a lot of my artwork now, we go and find different crystals and geodes and nature, and I like to make things out of those. And then I try to incorporate that like across the board and all different things. So even pulling flowers or, different patterns, textures, all of those different things I like to use from nature and then incorporate throughout the artwork. So definitely that has its number one hold on my mind and my heart always is nature. There's so much inspiration out there, and it never gets old.
Yeah, for sure. So did you grow up here in Rockford, or where did you grow up?
I grew up in a lot of different, so my first 10 years of my life, I lived in Marengo, and Rockford was always our destination spot that we came to. So it's always been the biggest city that we could go to, besides Chicago. And then so Marengo was my first 10 years of my life, and then Dixon was like the next 10 years. So again, Rockford was like the destination spot. It wasn't that far. And so I didn't necessarily grow up here, but Rockford was always that striving spot to go to and be and immerse yourself into, whether it was the mall or a nature place or anything, you always wanted to come to Rockford because they always had it all. So,
that's awesome.
So just recently I moved to this area just a couple of years ago, but it's definitely, now I'm learning so much more about the city and seeing all of its magic that it has to offer. And it's really great.
Yeah, it's got quite the art scene.
Absolutely, which I feel like such a newbie to that scene specifically. Like, it's so neat to see the art scene. I mean, that's been, since 1987?
Yeah.
So it's like, that's fascinating to know it's been going on for such a long time, and now just seeing all the artists that are coming up from everything and how they're being showcased. It's really great to have this art city, and I call it the sprawling forest city too, because of all the forest preserves and arboretums and everything. It's really amazing.
Yeah, I would say like that's the first thing I noticed as a person who loves and enjoys art, and I love to go to museums all the time. And so, like when I first moved here, I was like, oh, people here really appreciate art, and I've seen all the monuments, the installations, and so it's really cool that your art is here in the library, and it's 3 dragons in the kids area. So how did that come about? Like, how did you get to be in the library, and what inspired the dragons?
I keep trying to piece it together how it exactly happened. It was one of those things of my Uncle Wes was very sweet one day and came over just to visit us at my house, and he asked me what art projects I had been working on, and this was last summer, and I just so happened to complete a project that it was, kind of from my brain. I was like, I had just made these dragons for a company that they were doing a medieval masquerade was the whole theme, and it resulted in they thought I was going to paint a dragon for this specific idea. And I'm like, I have a different idea, but I'm not going to tell you what it is until I bring it in. And so every year, this is a company that they've hired me on for like the past 10 years to
that's awesome.
paint different murals and whatnot. And it resulted in, I just wanted to surprise them and be like, hey, look what I can do. Because they know I can paint. And that was like the joke. They always call me the painter and da-da-da-da. And so then I'm like, oh, well, let's show you what else I can do. And I brought in these 2 dragons that I had made them for their specific event, the medieval masquerade. And they were like, what in the world? Where did you come up with this idea? And I was like, I don't know. It just kind of happened. And then I showed my uncle those pictures, and he was like, oh, my goodness. And then just by, I don't even say chance. I feel like it's definitely this, I don't understand what's happening, but I'm just going with it type thing.
Serendipitous.
Exactly. I just put my hands up and say, all right, I'm not steering anymore. But my uncle showed it to Lynn, who was the executive director, and he was talking to her about donating a painting. So that was part of that. And then she was like, interesting. And then that's how the first step happened, I guess. And then she's like, yeah, I want to meet with her. And then I came in thinking I was going to be talking about painting like something in like the nooks and crannies of the children's area, because that's what my first idea was. And she was like, but I saw a picture of these dragons that you had made. And she's like, I just can't get it out of my head. And I was like, you know what? I could see that in that space. And then that's how the conversation started. And then it was, well, what can you do? And so then I kind of came up with this plan of I could make 3 of them. And then we came up with different dimensions of how big they were going to be. And again, magic happened. And that big one grew 4 feet somehow. I don't know. So that one decided to get a little bit bigger, but that's okay.
How big is the largest one?
The largest one is 19 feet long. So I was going to make him 15, but he decided to grow. So I went with it and said, okay, if you want to be that big, you're going to be that big. So, and then the other 2 are about 6 feet and 4 feet. So those are the total dimensions of them all. But so that's how the conversation started, was that, and then it grew into, well, let's really see what I can do with this and how I can make it grow and become something different than the other ones, but similar enough to where they're going to be dragons,
Yeah.
So that was how the whole thing had started, and it just grew from there. And it was exciting I had done research to see all the different types of dragons, because too much research was done, is what I will admit to. The fantasy side of my brain was like, this is great, and I dove into all of the different details of what I could create. But with the Rock River being right by the library, I decided to go in the direction of the water dragons or air-type dragons, which they have a very specific look to them. And so then I'm like, that makes sense. At least that's what I convinced myself of. And then they grew from there and were created.
So they're water dragons. I thought it was interesting that you said it has a mind of its own. Like, can you share like how that like each dragon? Did they just, you kind of thought it through, and then as you're going, it just, the creativity just outflows, and then something
Something
different?
different comes in. That's exactly, yes, you're explaining it exactly. You have this idea. I had sketches. I had, preliminary mock-ups of my little baby dragons that were just the idea, just to kind of, okay, this will work. And then from there, as I'm making them, sometimes they would change, or I used like an air foam clay for the final layer that the scales were built out of, and sometimes that would dry differently, or you put it on one way, but then it would shift and morph, and gravity would take its hold and do something different. So I would have a plan, but sometimes it would go the opposite way, and either you can be like, oh, it's ruined, or you're like, I'm going to work with it, and this is what it is, and it decided to change it how it was going to look. And so you either adapt or you crumble. And I decided to let the medium be its medium and not get angry that it was going to change how it was going to look, and just work with it and see what I can do with it. And it just decides to do something different sometimes. Like specifically, I feel like the daddy is what I'll Oceanus is the name that he has been given.
Okay.
But he while I was making him, like, a lot of things shifted because he was so long, and gravity just wanted to bend him in half. And so a lot of the clay, as I was working with it, like, it just shifted differently, which it worked. It totally works. It looks more like they're moving then. It looks like they're actually more animated rather than stagnant. So I liked how it looked rather than the original way that I had set it up. And I'm like, all right, it's just going to do that, and I'm going to work with it.
So what are the dragons made of?
The inside layer is a lot of recycled materials. I used a lot of branches that on windy days were my favorite days, because I could go out and harvest all of the branches that I needed to kind of build up the rib cage or build up the spinal area of the dragons. The big daddy is made up of a lot of recycled flour sacks from Crust and Crumbles.
Oh.
So thank you, Crust and Crumbles. But that built up the body to create more of like an abdomen and like a structural that I could build off of. And then from that, the baby one has like a broken wooden spoon, and I had kept it. I have to admit, I have my hoarding days of I could use this for something, and I set it off to the side, and I don't know what I want to use it for, but it'll show its face eventually. And I definitely had that with a lot of the pieces that I used within for structural.
It was meant to be.
It was just meant to be. Like, we had a broken Peppa Pig skateboard that ended up in one of them, and a broken spoon, and like a inner tube that we had ruptured over the winter with sledding that ended up in the mama. And so I just used everything that was on hand that it could help build up the whole body of them, and just made sure I recycled a lot of different materials rather than going out and buying things that, yeah, I knew it would work, but I wanted to try to use the things that were around us rather than trying to buy all of the materials that would work perfect for it. So,
so tell me more. Why choose to recycle materials versus buying all the materials that?
We all know that we got a problem. So why not come up with a solution? So I really enjoy trying to come up with solutions of using things that would just be normally tossed out. That's not worth it anymore to just throw things away, because we're very aware they don't go away. Yes, they're out of our visual sight, but that's not, depending on the material, they're not necessarily decomposing. So why not figure out another use for it? And I get it. It could be looked at as hoarding. It could be looked at as a lot of other different terms that now have been applied to if your space isn't perfectly organized and kept with everything in its nook. But it's essential that we try to come up with different uses for things. Like, I am notorious, and my mother would vouch for this, but there's broken lamps now that have solar lights sticking out of them out in our garden, because why not? It just gives the light a little bit of a height. It's broken, but why not try to come up with another solution instead of throwing it away? So I know it's psychotic at times because of my piles that I have sitting around, but at the same time, it's really essential that we do our part, each of us. There's not anything that everyone can do something for this. So why not come up with a solution for it rather than making more of a problem?
Yeah.
So my husband was a very critical part of this because he accepted a job in which he's dealing with waste right now. And it's on an island, so they have to be so aware of what exactly is being thrown away or what can that be used for? Can it be used in a different area? And he is sorting through all of this stuff right now and figuring out a solution. So I was like, this is something that we've been doing since we've been together. So it's been a while. And so I'm like, why not? Why not just continue down this path of coming up with a solution rather than making more of a problem? So
yeah. And I just think when you put limits, it's like it pushes your creativity too.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. When you're like, no, you're not allowed to go out and buy the things that you need. You need to figure out what you can use that's right in front of you. And that's where the branches came in. I had like old chicken wire sitting around. I'm like, oh, that'll be great for the rib cage, and it's lightweight. And so it was all of those different things, and just making sure, like I helped my sister with renovation, and like they had this big metal pole. I'm like, oh, I gotta take this. And she's like, yeah, go right ahead. I'm like, thank you. So thankfully my family is nothing but supportive and very aware of my creativity is how I'll phrase it.
For sure.
They are nothing but sweet and supportive and making sure that I have all of my materials.
So with that, with having to kind of like grab different materials, how long was the process in making the dragons?
In total, it was 6 months from start to finish.
Wow.
So coming up with the idea, kind of sketching it out in my head, that was like, I gave myself the first month to do that, just to get all of the ideas that I had out, whether it was on paper or just like writing it down and drawing it or anything, any way that I could get the idea out, just to kind of filter through. Because, your first idea isn't always the best idea. And so you got to get them all out there. So I made sure to do all of that. And then from there, I started with the baby one first, and the mama kind of at the same time, and then worked on them, building them up, figuring out the problems, so that way the biggest daddy could be tackled with no issues, hopefully. And thankfully that helped kind of build up my confidence into where then I'm like, all right, we're going to get this big one and not be intimidated by the grand scale of him. So
what are their names? So I remember hearing you share their names before. Yes. So, and can you share where they came from? The
Absolutely.
Names?
So with them being water-type dragons, I kind of stuck with that. And I'm really into mythology, and just, it's so fascinating, all of the different stories. That's definitely a part of all of it. So I went with Oceanus is the biggest one, the 19-footer. And then Tethys is the mama. And then, oh my gosh, Scamander is the baby. And Oceanus and Tethys, those were water titans. So they controlled the oceans and river. Tethys was like oceans, river, like a lot of freshwater systems. And then Oceanus is like the Poseidon, the titan of, he is the titan of the ocean, and like bigger than Poseidon, type thing. And then Scamander was a child of those two. So I thought it was perfect to kind of build off of that. And I'm like, oh, it's too perfect. And they kind of look like salamanders. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, it's perfect, the name. So I went along with that because I just thought it was fascinating when I was reading up on it. And I'm like, yep, okay, these are the perfect names for them.
Yeah.
And they all have their little teeth. And it seemed right.
Yeah, it's cool to see them hanging like the way that they are, like with their wings like out and just kind of floating. I'm thankful for the maintenance guys who were able
my goodness, me too. The thought of, or me thinking I had to figure out a solution on my own, I was terrified. And I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
But then I was told, no, we have a wonderful crew. And I'm like, thank goodness.
So what do you hope people feel or take away when they experience the work and the installation in the library?
I hope that when people come into the space, they are inspired, first of all. It's definitely a visual excitement with the ocean, the big 19-footer right when you walk in. It's definitely something to be excited about, I guess, with his just sheer scale. And then I hope that people, not even, I wanted to say this before, but I'm like, not just families, but like, I get family doesn't necessarily have to be your blood. Like it can be anyone, and families can be met at the library. Like you can meet other families and become part of their family. And that's exactly, it's like, yeah, all the dragons kind of look similar, but they could be their own individual, but they could be a family. You know, you make your own story for it, and it results in this realization of there's family everywhere. And it's
Right.
When you are able to connect with people and connect on, especially like a creative level, then you realize, wow, I can really connect with so many different people. And it's not just my own family that's my family. I have family everywhere. That was a pleasant reminder for my husband because he's up in, I'm sorry, not Wisconsin, Michigan. And so we are 7 hours apart, and we are loving life right now and also missing each other. And it's this moment of he is on an island with people he doesn't know, but he has created this sense of family with strangers. And it's really admirable. And it made me get inspired of like, that's exactly what I want people to feel, is like the sense of family, even if they're not necessarily around their family. And it's so silly because you're like, oh, you just made some dragons, and you're like, it's a family. But it's really important to have those people in your lives that aren't your family, that are still your family, your friends,
Right.
friend family that you look to and are supported by, and hugged and loved and wiped your tears away, and they really are there for you no matter what. So that it sounds so silly because you're like, oh, you just want to walk into the space and see these magical dragons, and it's supposed to make you feel all these things, but it really it just really brings people together. Like just thinking about when the maintenance men came and helped pick up these dragons, I was so grateful because I didn't know how I was going to get this 19-foot dragon into the library. And just the conversation that started the moment that they showed up, and here, a bunch of grown adults standing around talking about what the names of the dragons are. And it just created this fun, childlike wonder for something that I didn't expect adults to feel this childlike wonder from. And it was really great. Like, you don't know what you're going to feel after you create this thing and you've been working on it for so long. It's this weird sense of like, I still look for them and like go to touch them up, and I'm like, nope, they're gone out of the house. Like they're not here. So it just was really fascinating just to see what conversations started with other adults, and just to see what it brought us together in a different way that I wasn't expecting. And so I was like, all right, this is exactly what I was hoping for, but I didn't realize it, but now I'm realizing it.
That's really cool. I just think about the era that we're in, where people do not usually stay where they were born. It's this constant mobility. It's hard to think about anybody really staying in the same place for more than 5 years.
Absolutely.
Maybe. Especially in your 20s, it's like you're constantly moving. And until you have like maybe a family of your own, it's kind of the thing that kind of makes you think about like staying where you are.
Absolutely.
So yeah. So I think that's awesome that your process or the thought you have is that we have family.
The family.
The family. Because I think that's so important. Like the community and our connection with people. It's the thing that is not computerized.
Absolutely. It's the real thing. Like you're getting the real hug and the real conversation and the real reaction rather than typing it and not really knowing what the backup feeling is, because you're just reading somebody's words rather than hearing them or seeing their facial expression, because it's so lost some days it feels like it's lost because you're just communicating through technology, and then you have those moments of seeing the person's face and you're like, I'm seeing your real reaction and I understand what you're really feeling. So yes, it's definitely a learning. It's all learning. We're all learning, right?
Yeah. I was just thinking, like, because we're basically in an artist community, do you have lots of friends who are artists? Is there like this synergy that you have with other artists, like just even talking or just hearing about the work they're doing?
I'm newer to this area, and I have to admit, with me working on the dragons, I became a little bit of a creative hermit. And I didn't want to ruin the surprise by me being excitedly talking about it with people. So I made sure to just kind of hunker down and work through winter and work on these dragons secretly without openly communicating about them. But I do love, I like to go out and do markets. And when you come across people at markets and you're communicating and talking with them, different artists specifically, I do love hearing about their process, what they do, how they do it. I'll talk their ear off, and it's not necessarily the best place to do that at a market when you're trying to sell your stuff and they're trying to sell their stuff. But I always love hearing the process, hearing, what they used. That's always different materials can be used in so many different ways. And I always love talking people's ear off about that or listening to them talk about it as well, not just me talking.
So what's been one of the biggest challenges or as an artist? What's been one of the biggest challenges as an artist?
My own head.
Okay.
Getting in my own head, or the self-criticism. I guess you are taught, if you go to college, you have to critique yourself, you have to critique others, and you have to you're always looking for the positives and the negatives. You kind of want to do that. You don't want to just cut them down all the way, but you make sure to do that positive reinforcement type thing. But sometimes that can carry over when you're by yourself and you're not necessarily getting feedback from others. It's your best and worst enemy. It makes you look at it from a different angle, but sometimes it keeps you stagnant and doesn't allow you to have momentum or move forward from it. And you're just sitting there cutting it down rather than building it up and looking at the positives, So that's definitely one thing that I'm teaching myself over and over is stop being your own worst critic. Yes, sometimes it helps you to be better, but other times it makes you just stand still.
How are you able to move out of that headspace?
Music.
Or
not just music, but also stepping away. Whether I just say, okay, today is not my day that I work on this right now because something's going on in my head that I'm not able to get over and I just need to step away. And I try to go and do something active or go out and Rock Cut is our number one submersive zone. And we go into there and we walk around and make sure to clear our heads and just, get it out and go back to it at a different time. But in music, it's the number one thing. That definitely helps me to get in the zone or get out of my head and just, stop listening to the voice in there and instead listen to the music and the voices that are speaking a good thing to you.
So what kind of music are you listening to that kind of, you're like, I need to go to this right now to get out of this space?
Oh, man. It depends on the day is always my answer because I have a lot of different artists that I enjoy. And sometimes it's in a different language because I don't even need to hear English sometimes. I just like listening to all different world music is where sometimes it's just the beat that you have to hear and it just gets you in this trance-like state of all right, you're hearing that beat and you're moving and you're doing something different rather than criticizing yourself. So
I've actually heard that there are certain sounds or beats that can help you either concentrate and focus or just kind of move you along.
Absolutely. It's I don't want to, but I will not. I won't go down that route of me trying to sing or anything like that. But it's so beneficial. That is my number one beneficial thing that I've noticed is just put on some music, and we have a little record player we'll put on, and my kids love it, and they like to listen to it all.
So, are there any projects you're currently working on that you're excited about?
I always have way too many projects, but that's not a bad thing. I like to always keep myself busy. But with my business partner, we design our own jewelry line. So in Chicago, my sister-in-law owns her own It's a bridal hair and makeup place, and she has like her own retail spot. So we're selling our jewelry in there. So we're creating a new line to go in there, and that's Rare Bird Beauties and Evermore Extensions. It's all one, and they're right next door to each other. And then Skydive Chicago is another one in which I do a big mural and whatnot, and that will be happening. And they have a big world record jump in August, so I always like to mention them because they're a great place to go. It's down in Ottawa.
Oh, cool. Well, we're coming to an end. What haven't we talked about that you've been wanting to share?
Good question. Talked about the dragons and all of what they definitely. I mean, the Rockford Public Library is a magical place. I am blown away by the space and just the natural light that comes into the children's area. I could spend all day here.
I know, I love that light.
Find a new nook or new little anything, and that definitely is. It's a magical space. This is a really great space you guys have created, and I'm so honored to be a part of it and to be in here and have the dragons here.
Is there, how can people find you or your work? And I think you mentioned the parachutes.
Yes. So down at Skydive Chicago, they'll be doing the world record jump and whatnot, and that's there'll be a few things out there for viewing. I get that we do with like a big painted sign, and then my business name is Trala Creative, and so we are on Facebook and Instagram, and those are two areas that we are doing, and then. That is how you can find me, is by that business name.
Great. It's so good to have you. Thank you so much, Kristin, for joining us and sharing your journey with our listeners. It's voices like yours that remind us how much creativity and connection lives right here in our community. And to everyone tuning in, thank you for spending your time with us. The podcast celebrates how the library is more than just shelves and silence. It's a space for art, learning, storytelling, and community. Want to connect more? Visit us at the rockfordpubliclibrary.org to explore events, workshops, and resources designed for you. Until next time, keep creating, keep connecting, and remember, your library is so much more than books.
Thank you, Laura. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Kristin.